Welcome everyone. We are going to wait 2 minutes for people to join the call. So in 2 minutes we will start. Good afternoon from Geneva and a warm welcome to everyone who has joined. My name is Zainab Naimi and I work in the Department of Maternal, Newborn, Child and Adolescent Health in WHO headquarters, Geneva. I'm delighted to welcome you, but before we proceed with the webinar, as usual, we have some house rules. They're available in the chat window, but I will just repeat them here so we are all on the same page. So everyone is muted on entry and we only unmute the speakers. We will have a question and answer session after the presentation. So please post your questions in the chat room and send them to all panelists during the presentation, and not just to the host, so to all panelists. My colleague, Benedict Walter, she will moderate the questions and read them loud in the question and answer session, but do post them in the chat room as we're going ahead with the presentation. Any questions we don't have time to answer today will be shared with the presenter and answered on the website in the days to follow. So over to a short background. The Network for Improving Quality of Care for Maternal, Newborn, and Child Health has been organizing a series of webinars on selected topics. The focus is on country perspectives and also on quality improvement implementation science. If you're regularly following the webinars, you know that the first series was about point-of-care quality improvement. And if you are new to the webinars, you can still find all the recordings from previous webinars online on qualityofcarenetwork.org. Today's session is the fourth in the second webinar series that highlights examples on quality improvement work from the 9 countries that are leading the quality of care network. To provide a quick review of previous webinars in this series, I'll just tell that we started with the National Quality of Care Network in India, where Dr. Vikram Datta from Lady Hardinge Medical College in New Delhi shared their experiences in establishing a hospital learning network across India. He highlighted how the network was expanded and managed to sustain its efforts over time. The second webinar was in collaboration with the Global Learning Laboratory for Quality UHC, and then we explored how quality of care from maternal, newborn, and child health can serve as a pathfinder for enhanced quality of service delivery. The discussion following this webinar has continued in the Global Learning Lab communities of practice, and if you're interested in participating in this, you can get more information from Benedict Walter, who has been communicating with you. In the last webinar, we heard from Dr. Suzanne Kiwanuka, who highlighted the use of mentoring and supervision of quality improvement teams, together with community involvement for improving quality of care in 3 districts in Uganda through the Manifest Project. Coming to today's webinar, we'll be hearing about experiences from the Expanded Management Using Information Power Initiative, in short called EQUIP. The EQUIP initiative was implemented by the Makerere University in Uganda and by Ifakara Health Institution in Tanzania from 2010 to 14. The EQUIP initiative used a quality management approach which linked communities and facilities using locally generated data. And today's speaker, Dr. Peter Weiswa, will present some of the outcomes of this project. Dr. Weiswa is an associate professor at the Department of Health Policy, Planning and Management, School of Public Health, Makerere University, Uganda, and the Karolinska Institute, Sweden. Dr. Weiswa, I hand over to you for your presentation.
Hello, good afternoon. I hope you can hear me properly. My name is Peter Weiswa, and I'm here speaking from Makerere in Uganda. And this afternoon, I'll be speaking to you about linking communities and facilities to improve quality of care for mothers and newborns. I'm seated here with my colleague, Dr. Monica Okuga, with whom we shall be responding to the questions. EQUIP is an intervention study that we did in Uganda and also in Tanzania, in 1 district in Uganda and also 1 district in Tanzania. And you can see the main paper which is published that shows the results of EQUIP in details for those of you who might want to read more and understand more of what we did in EQUIP. As already said, this was a 4-year study which we started in 2010 and ended in 2017. So the background is, as you know, quality improvement is a recommended strategy to improve implementation levels of evidence-based essential interventions to improve maternal newborn care. I say here in the low and middle income countries, but indeed, quality improvement is universal. And right now is the main focus for WHO and others. So, but we have a lot of gaps in understanding how to do quality improvement at scale. So the aim of EQUIP, we aim to test a systematic and a collaborative quality improvement approach that covers an entire district, so that we cover district, including district management, the facilities, and the community level. In other words, all levels of a district in order to inform scale up. Because we know that when you do a district as a unit, in the case of Uganda, then you have a unit that you can scale up. So the study setting, as already said, was one district in Tanzania. This is in the first map, the green part, and one district in Uganda. The brown parts are the control districts. The design of this study was a plausibility study. It was not a randomized control trial. Where we compared, we had one intervention district and one control district. But one thing which was innovative through EQUIP, we also collected data through what we called continuous surveys at population level. And the aim of this data was actually to generate what we called report cards, sort of what is the coverage of the different interventions at community level. But the same data was also used for the evaluation. So we didn't collect data at the end to do evaluation. This data was collected during the implementation process. The data was on the process, on coverage and practices, but also we collect data on quality indicators. And this was done in both the facilities, but also at community level. Later, as we'll see, most of the analysis we used interrupted time series analysis, where we applied a difference approach. In other words, you compare intervention to control, taking the baseline and end line, and you see whether there is a difference. So below the maps, you can see that we have the districts where we implemented. In one part, we have the district, the intervention district, and the other side is the comparison district. In each of the districts, of course, we have communities, which are here represented by C, and also the health facilities. But in the intervention districts, where we did the quality improvement at district, at community, and at facility level, I'll be going through here in detail to show you what exactly were the components of the intervention. The comparison district only had the surveys, so we didn't do any quality improvement there. It was the standard of care that was going on. In this slide, which is entitled the intervention, I show you that actually we bought the collaborative model of improvement, which is bought from IHR, which has the use of PDSA or the Plan, Do, Study, Act, whereby when you're actually copying this, you're implementing, start by asking the question that what are we trying to accomplish? And in the situation, of course, wanted to improve quality of care for mother and newborns, but of course there will be different change ideas. How will we know that a change is an improvement? In other words, what are the indicators? And how shall we measure? And then what changes can we make that will result in the improvement? So that is the Plan, Do, Study, Act that I guess most of the participants that are listening are familiar with. And on the right is depicts a summary of this EQUIP intervention. First, the collaborative approach. We started by bringing participants together in each district. This included identifying the participants and then doing the pre-work. The pre-work included sensitizing the district, that is making the district entry, sensitizing the communities, sensitizing the facilities, but also getting the teams together. As we said, we worked at the community and also at the facility level and the district level. Of course, the facilities were existing. Also, the district team was existing. This was the district health team, the DX team. But the community, we had to identify community health workers, whom we selected and trained. In Uganda, we have voluntary community health workers. These came together in the first learning session, depicted here by LS1, basically to agree that they are going to have a collaborative approach to improving quality across an entire district. And then they went home after they formed their quality improvement teams and started doing the Plan, Do, Study, Act approach in trying to implement at the district, at the facility, and at community level. Then after periods of about 3-4 months, They would come back for another learning session, and it continued like that. And of course, during that time, we had an intensive support from mentors. Together, these trial teams in Uganda and Tanzania. In Tanzania, we had about 20 quality improvement teams in health facilities. In Uganda, we had 32. The district in Uganda was larger than that in Tanzania. But also at community level, we formed community quality improvement teams that I call here the CQITs. These were 65 in Tanzania and about 157 in Uganda. Basically, what we would do, we would ask a village to identify 2 community workers that would come together in the next level of administrative level, which is called a parish, and form the community quality improvement team. So a community quality improvement team had between 10 and 20 people, but the facilities depended on the size of the facilities. Smaller facilities had smaller membership, and of course, larger facilities had larger membership. So in the next slide, I give more about this quality improvement approach that we took at 3 different levels of the district. This is the conceptual framework we used. First, we start with the policy briefs. Policy briefs is basically, we looked at what is the evidence in countries of what they prioritize as interventions for maternal newborn. And it is from these policy briefs that we gave to the districts and the quality improvement teams so that they generate their change idea based on what is considered evidence, something considered works and is part of the evidence in Tanzania and also in Uganda in terms of policy. So the quality improvement teams at the district, at the facilities and the community would use these as a guide to coming up there with areas of focus. And of course, within those areas of focus, then they would come up with locally generated change ideas. The aim of the district quality improvement team was actually we knew that management is important for quality improvement teams. Perhaps that is one of the important messages I want to pass across, that we didn't want to leave the facility quality improvement teams in a vacuum. But also we know that many quality improvement approaches focus on facilities only. But we thought that generating demand is important, and this demand must be responded to by quality and capacity in facilities. This is why we had quality improvement teams at the community and the parish level. And that would improve with demand, and we hope that it would improve utilization, which would lead to improved quality, and of course, if possible, reduce the mortality for mothers and newborns. Along the way, we were collecting data from a different team, an independent team was collecting data at household level on a continuous basis to see what is the coverage of the different interventions and practices. And this data would summarize in what we would call report cards and give these report cards to the quality improvement teams at the district, but also during the learning sessions. So in the next slide shows administratively how we organized ourselves to work at these 3 different levels. In each country, we had a project team, basically 2 people, one focusing on the facility, one at the community, but most of the implementation, the coordination, the mentorship was done by district staff, supported by an external person from the Ministry of Health as a senior mentor to support the quality improvement teams. But otherwise, all the implementation and most of the mentorship was done by district-based mentors. Some of them who came from the district level, but some of them, in the case of Uganda, came from the sub-district level. So here, we show you, I've already said that the starting point was the policy briefs, and then the quality improvement teams came up with the change ideas. And some of the things that they focused on as the evidence-based intervention that they selected, here in the table we show what Uganda and Tanzania chose. For instance, both countries wanted to improve the health facility delivery and also birth preparedness. they wanted to improve screening for syphilis. In Uganda, Uganda wanted to improve recognition and correct management of pregnancy-induced hypertension. We knew in Uganda that hypertension is common, and in the district there was no capacity. So Uganda chose it, but Tanzania didn't. Then intermittent preventive treatment for malaria in pregnancy, active management of the third stage of labor was selected by both countries, but also infection prevention for cesarean sections, and the improved birth asphyxia management was selected in Tanzania, but not in Uganda. In Uganda, mostly because there was a separate project that had already introduced birth preparedness. Then KEMS was also prioritized in Uganda, and postnatal care in both countries. I've already said that the selection of the topics was actually guided by international literature, but also local policies and evidence, and this went through a thematic approach. So in the next slide, I'll show you an example of a report card. And in the next two slides show examples of report cards, because we knew that data drives quality improvement. But then how do you generate the data? Our aim, one of the most important things we had in this EQUIP trial, was that the intervention that we do will not just translate into improvement in the facilities, but this would be translated into improvements at household level or at population level. So at community level, they came up with report cards. Report cards is basically the coverage of interventions for a particular indicator. Let's say in this situation, we are looking at the percentage of women in Tandahimba, this is in Tanzania, who in a recent birth delivered at home, said the birth attendant used gloves. So we knew that the community quality improvement teams are not able to read and write in most of the situations. So we use circles to represent. A shaded circle means that they are doing the right thing, and a shadow that is empty means that they are not. So that is how we did the report cards at community level. And the picture shows them actually looking at the different report cards. And then at the facilities, we did the common stuff, which is basically a run chart. So in this picture, for instance, it's a run chart from Uganda, which shows when we started the quality improvement activities in 2011 with sensitization. Then one of the change ideas was making a home visit. Then later they introduced birth preparedness, and later they actually came up with an innovation at community level, which was women in saving groups. One of the things we realized that just improving quality, focusing on quality, sensitizing people, does not remove the other barriers such as access to transport, which remains a major challenge, but also to money. So women, because they had been convinced, and also the community health workers, came up with an idea of starting saving groups as a change idea. So we had different levels of implementation of saving groups in Uganda, but this was not the case in Tanzania. And as we see with time, the number of women who are preparing for birth was actually going up. So what did we learn? What were the results? So in this table, we show you a summary of the results, which of course is going to not the table you would want to see or that we wanted to see. We see that at population level, and the MACU, we had seen a lot of improvements in terms of what we see in one chart, like the one you saw previously, that there was a lot of improvement. But this did not necessarily translate into effective, significant improvements at a household level. And we shall be discussing what could be the reason for this. We also discuss this in detail in the paper. So for instance, we look at the number of women who delivered in facilities, a 70% increase in Tanzania, but in Uganda there was not marked improvement. By the way, one of the things that was already happening, there was this cyclical effect whereby in the intervention districts where the deliveries were going up, deliveries in Uganda are now almost 3/4 of women go to facilities. So a possible reason we didn't have this significant effect. The use of urotonics, the drugs for prevention of postpartum hemorrhage, a big increase in Tanzania, and a little bit a smaller increase in Uganda. Immediate breastfeeding did not change at population level, although we're seeing these changes at facility level. Knowledge of danger signs, improvement in Tanzania, but not necessarily in Uganda. Clean birth kits, big improvements in Tanzania, but also some significant improvement in Uganda. Postpartum care, postpartum visits in the first 7 days of life, after birth, a 17% increase in Tanzania, but not much increase in Uganda. Wrapping of babies after birth, 70% increase in Tanzania, but this was not prioritized in Uganda. And then supervision of health facilities, which happened in Tanzania, in Uganda, which have not been prioritized. We will be discussing these issues, how context may actually influence what you achieve in the quality improvement, as we see the differences in Tanzania and Uganda in terms of the amount of improvement that we see. So another thing that we learned is that data makes a big difference. Of course, it's not news that quality improvement is actually driven by data. So in our situation, of course, we had data at different levels. There is data that was collected locally by the facilities, data that was collected locally by the community quality improvement teams, but we had a parallel data collection through continuous survey that was also providing data that was summarizing into report cards. Now, we see that actually this data is there. It can be collected. Data can be collected in facilities and be used for quality improvement. Data can be collected in the community and used for quality improvement. But of course, at district level, they also have data, but they rarely use it, data through DHIS. So data is available, but there are quality issues, but also capacity to use issues, and sometimes willingness to use. Data availability in itself is not a means to an end. Data use requires training, requires facilitation, requires mobilization, requires motivation. So that we know, but that is the role of the mentors. Teamwork is critical for data to be used productively, especially as we know data for quality improvement. You must go through the process of generating change ideas and then be able to act on the change ideas. Participation of the district and I must say also national managers important for quality improvement to be effective, to have impact, and to be sustainable. Because many times the quality improvement teams face challenges and they require to be supported by, they come up with a change idea, but sometimes the response is not actually by the local team, requires the help from a district manager, and sometimes even a district manager requires the national level. So that is important, but one of the problems we see is that the flexibility, even when district managers, sometimes the decision space and fiscal space to be able to respond is a problem. That is the case in Uganda. In Tanzania, there was a bit of flexibility because in Tanzania, district managers have a little bit extra money, but also they collect money from user fees. So they have a bit of cash which they can access as opposed to Uganda, whereby the budget is quite controlled. Then participation, the use of data can be a basis for health system improvement for maternal newborn health, because this data can be used for QI, data can be used for advocacy. Actually, when we would have the district quality improvement team meeting, we would present the figures, and these figures, the district would respond to them in terms of mobilizing more staff, recruiting more staff, sometimes redeploying the available staff, or going back to the national level and demand for more. In fact, one of the things that we saw in Uganda and even Tanzania, facilities that were initially not functional, they were supported to start to be functional and start delivering by the district posting their nurses and giving them equipment. But of course, it requires that flexibility, it requires engagement. There is the need to focus on a few relevant and simple indicators, because if you have too many indicators, it becomes problematic. One of the challenges we faced in EQIP was that almost each team came up with their own change idea. And eventually, there are too many different things that were not coordinated. So the need to focus on a few high-impact indicators, therefore to come up with change ideas at scale is important. So like here, I give you a quote from some of the work, and one of the community level volunteers says, "I like collecting data because it guides me to do what I am supposed to do. However, it is not easy to calculate the percentages and plot the graphs, even if we can read and write." So they can collect data, but how do they make sense out of it? This is one of the innovations we need to be working on for people who don't have a lot of education. This is why we use report cards of circles in this situation. Then, what else do we learn? We learned that community and facility initiatives complement each other in QI. I must add that community, facility, and district level, and perhaps national level. So the increase in the demand that sometimes is done at community level needs to be met by an improvement in quality and responsiveness at facility level. As we see in this graph, we see the proportion of health facility deliveries going up because of an increase in demand. And I bring here a quote from Tanzania, an in-depth interview where somebody says, they have helped us because now all pregnant women attend the facility because of what was happening at the community. They also tell traditional midwives not to help pregnant women to deliver at home, but to take them to the hospital. So this working at community and facility level complement each other. Then also we learned that mentoring and coaching drive QI, but they need continuous availability of resources. These resources are both human, money, transport, and of course the commodities at facilities. Region-focused mentorship has the potential to improve skills and practice. We saw these improvements happening both at community and facility level. For effective mentorship, there should be adequate resources in terms of funds, time, human resource. The major challenge was also competing activities. The people at the district level, if you want to use district mentors, they are busy in several things. So how do we manage this? We need to have a pool of mentors, but sometimes these are not available. That is one of the challenges for scaling up quality improvement in districts and also across countries. And they are busy, especially in facilities. Then issues of sustainability, as we know, you require quite a lot of resources. Then the PDS cycle, which is of course promoted a lot, is a very good thing, very systematic, but people found it difficult to use. So health workers and community volunteers found it challenging to understand at the beginning. With time, they improved, but we knew it took a lot of energy at the community, facility level, and having a mentor. So here is one person from Uganda saying, at first it was very difficult to understand and use the cycles because we are slow learners, but due to monthly mentoring sessions, we continued using the cycles and finally were able to grasp it. So PDS cycles are promoted, but they can be, of course, a challenge to understand, and people usually don't work systematically. As health workers, I think we are never trained into that systematic approach. So this needs to be introduced perhaps much earlier in school, in training, and maybe later become a norm. What did we learn in terms of costs? So here we look at selected costs. The community QI in Tanzania costs about $0.18 per capita. And in Uganda, it was a little bit heavy because we had to form the quality improvement teams. The district was also more remote, and it cost a little bit more. In fact, the community QI was the most expensive in Uganda, whereas in Tanzania, it's the facility QI process, which was more expensive at $0.3 per capita. Then the district QI was actually relatively cheap because the district exists. So what do we see here? It is not so costly. Of course, it takes a little bit of money, but from a district, most districts cannot afford it. The most cost drivers were the mentoring and the coaching at facilities, but at communities, of course, the motivation of community workers was a major driver for the cost. And so, finally, these are my last slides. We learned that a systematic approach to quality improvement, which concurrently addresses bottlenecks in uptake of care, availability of drugs, and the health work practice might yield better results. In other words, we are saying that you can't just go and say you focus on QI. You need to be systematic and know the other bottlenecks that exist. Some of them are beyond what an implementer like health work can do, like availability of health workers or availability of commodities. So you need a district response and perhaps a national level response and feedback process. Then QI at the district level is more successful if we combine the district improvement work with the national system strengthening. So one of the things we saw that sometimes commodities, like in Uganda, sometimes commodities for some drugs, like for postpartum hemorrhage, we only deliver to what we call health center 3 and above, but the districts have been creating health center 2 because of access issues, and they were not receiving these commodities. But by engaging at national level, giving them feedback, some of the facilities started getting some of these commodities. Then the reason for lack of effect, or limited effect of the intervention, remember the first step I showed you, we have a number of reasons for this. One, our study is one of the first to show that quality improvement can actually have an impact, or to try to measure the impact of QI on population level coverage. So one of the things we saw that the actual period, although we implemented this from 2010 to 2014, we had 1 year of planning and setup, then piloting, and the actual implementation period was actually short, about a year, just slightly over a year in each country. So we needed much more periods of implementation, and we think if we had implemented longer, we would actually have a much larger impact. But also in Uganda health system is a little bit weak. I hope the minister doesn't hear me by saying that. But availability of commodities in Uganda is still a little bit of a challenge compared to Tanzania, as I already explained. But also we have the issue of the power of the study. We didn't have enough power to detect changes that were smaller than 10 percentage point change. So I think those are some of the reasons that we had, of course, plus the fact that we are not able to address other barriers. I mean, we didn't provide the transport, we didn't build new facilities, we didn't recruit more health workers. So the impact at population level could be impacted by that, plus the fact that already things were improving. So in conclusion, EQUIP was able to overcome selected low implementation levels of essential maternal and newborn health interventions. And actually, if we didn't have a comparison, we would have seen big improvement. But remember, we are comparing 2 districts, which is new to quality improvement. QI is a complex intervention, but it has a lot of potential to strengthen quality of care, but it takes time, and it requires multiple other approaches. QI, quality improvement, is feasible to implement at community level and the primary facility level, but it needs strong management and a support system, and of course can be expensive. In Uganda, we had almost 1,000 community workers in one district. This is quite a large number to manage by the district manager on top of other things they do. How do you manage that process? So we need to be more creative. Can this be done by other community members? These are questions. EQUIP demonstrated the potential for concurrent improvement in both demand and supply, but also as we work at district level. The effects were most pronounced in Tanzania, probably because of the district's own funds and I mean there was more available resources. Tanzania population was just half of Uganda. The district was also smaller in Tanzania. Then health workers and communities actually appreciated EQUIP. They say they don't abandon us, these people. They continue coming to us and they're changing our communities. We suggest here some areas for future research, and I will bring up one idea. More is needed to measure impact on population level of quality improvement. So we do quality improvement and we think we are making an improvement. But actually, is it making a difference at the population level? These are some of the things that we need to be looking at. So these are, I acknowledge the funders, the European Union, the government of Tanzania and Uganda, our study team, Professor Stefan Peterson, who is now at UNICEF, Claudia in Sweden, Jolan Thompson in Sweden, and Ulrika Becker. And then at London School, Joanna Schomburg, Tanya Merchant, and Everplan, Michael Mark, and myself and my colleague Moniko Kuga, who is here, Rogers, Darius, Validawa, the team in Tanzania, Atipakala Fatuma Manzi, and her team, the scientific advisor led by Dr. Alex Rowe of CDC Atlanta, and the district teams in all the countries, the health workers, the community health workers, and the communities in Uganda and Tanzania. Thank you so much.
Peter, this is Benny Fort again. Thank you so much for this very comprehensive run through on how to make a strategic use of data and what it takes to have proper data collection and use and the kind of setup it required on your side. You have a couple of questions that have come in. I want to say to all people on the line, post your question in the chat, but send them. You have an option. They ask you send it to all panelists. Otherwise, only the host see it, and I don't. So please send the question to all panelists. Thank you. Peter, I will read the first question to you. It's from Jean or Jean, I don't know. I apologize for not knowing how to pronounce it. Mwandira, who asked, in your job with the community, do you think that culture had any influence in the outcomes of the study?
Yes, we think that culture is important and it had influence. And this is one reason we had community health workers. They understand these communities more. Once we give them the evidence-based interventions and they gain the knowledge and skills, they are able actually to address the culture much better than any health worker.
Thank you. A related question to this is about literacy level in the community. Do you think that literacy level did play a role in the outcomes?
So literacy level is quite important. We know that literacy or education level is a major predictor of healthcare in terms of quality, utilization, behavior change. But also it affects us in terms of working with community health workers. As he said, for instance, there are challenges understanding a PDSA. So it has major influence. But with proper training and support to like community health workers working together with the health workers, you can address some of these issues. And actually, healthcare is not just best taught in English. It is the local language and the local communities, people understanding each other and the culture. And you can be able to go above some of these illiteracy issues. But of course, it takes time for one who is illiterate compared to one who is older aware.
Mm-hmm. A question on sustainability of the activities. Do you know to what extent the districts continue it? And whether there were any adaptation that they made either during the project implementation or after it ended?
Yeah, the sustainability, we were not able to sustain 100% of the things. So good enough, although this ended in 2014, we, as Mackay University, were doing a lot of implementation research in the region, and we keep in touch with the district. We know that the first part to be sustained was actually the facility level QI or components of it, because we built the capacity of the district to do QI. In fact, I see governments trying to select that district for the initiative, for the quality of care initiative, because the district has that capacity already inherent. In fact, one district person is actually helping the rest of the districts in the region. They are senior nursing officer. But also, in terms of the district, the DHMT, they continue at least using evidence in terms of trying to address district issues. Now, the major challenge is actually the community and also the other things like commodities. We never even sustained commodities because we could not supply them. But the community QI, because we use volunteers, remains the challenge. So the government of Uganda right now is actually adapting. It wants to roll out the Ethiopian model, the paid community health extension worker, or the CHU, working together with these volunteers that we had. So, and we have generated a lot of evidence around costing these community interventions which could guide government. So components were sustained, but maybe this kind of initiatives needs to be done by the government, not just researchers. And I think this is why we need the implementation research funded by government, so that the government is able to uptake these and sustain these initiatives.
Mm-hmm. A question on the different levels that you've mentioned. You very well separated the 3 levels of implementation. To what extent do you think district quality management teams were able to address system bottlenecks, and how do they coordinate with the national level?
This is really a good question. That first of all, doing district management team QI was very important, and was one of the first of its kind where to innovate how to do it and what do they focus on. And we were helped a lot by the continuous data collection that we were collecting. But they could use also the HIs too. And as a result of what we did, in fact, we learned from this and did another project with UNICEF called CODES, where the work that is similar work that we've done, UNICEF took it to 23 districts. And now the learning that we have done, UNICEF working with Mackay and Karolinska and others, the evidence that we have used to engage with the government, they are scaling up this now in the whole of Uganda as through the planning process. So the government has both aspects of what we did in EQUIP, in the CODES, to come up with national planning guidelines. But to what extent they address the bottlenecks? They were able to address some of the bottlenecks, like the staff availability, the staffing in terms of mainly recruiting some few staff, or sometimes redeploying staff, but also speaking to the national level in terms of getting some commodities. But some of the things will not easily be addressed. Now, the link between the national and the district, we actually, strategically in Uganda, we had one Minister of Health person, the Quality Improvement Advisor, was our external supporter, and he came to the district quarterly. So he helped in some of these things, but also there certainly remain challenges. I have my colleague here, Monica, she will comment when necessary. But those are some of the issues they're able to address. But we had some challenges with the district health teams. It was not easy. First of all, they are few, they are busy. Getting them in a quality improvement meeting always took a little bit more effort. And we think in the future, as I said before, this needs to be a standard by the national government, so that it is a requirement, it's a routine, it's something they monitor, it's something they report on, but also the local district management beyond the health section needs to be engaged with the district to ensure that some of these things are actually taking place.
Thank you. Another question on sustainability, but this time about the strategic use. This is from Anna Bergstrom, and she's asking whether you know whether the PDSA cycles are now routinely used now that people understand how to use it.
Um, Thank you, Anna, and I will understand the context here because we've worked with her here in Uganda before. It is not necessarily routine. One of the things that we are struggling with until today, and maybe I'm happy to hear other people maybe in a discussion forum, how do you sustain quality improvement? I think, Benedict, we need to be looking at this. How do you sustain quality improvement? Because to date, it seems it is it the way we introduce it is a problem? The way it is designed is a problem? I mean, we basically copied the IHI model, which is good, but I think the context is important. So the PDSA done by themselves, they are almost impossible to sustain unless they are linked to something, maybe like I don't know whether PBS can sing that. So that has been a challenge. But what we know that in these districts, other players have taken up this district. For instance, in Uganda, we have the RISE project, which is a USAID project, which already took up a lot of the efforts that we had done, and now they have sustained the PDSAs, especially in the higher level facilities. But the question is, outside external support, can the district sustain it? I think that question remains to be answered.
I think that the whole question on sustainability is probably a topic for a whole webinar series itself. We have a question from Shara Divanga to you about about mainstreaming. Let's say after 3 years where you have facilitated intervention, you facilitated intervention externally, and an intervention like this is mainstream in the health system, what steps could be taken? And what will have to create political priority among decision makers?
I think the question is not clear. If you could repeat the question.
Okay, so what step could be taken so after a few years of an intervention like this that is externally facilitated, it's actually mainstream within the health system?
So I have the benefit of having worked for almost a decade in a district under Minister of Health, and but also through, because I do a couple of implementation research, working in so many districts, especially here in Uganda. One of the critical things that I learned is the power of this being part of the normal planning process in a district. The district has to have a budget code for it, has to prioritize it, have to have a budget code for it, and then the national level has to provide that oversight. And I think until it is part of, at least for Uganda, we have decentralization, but it's not very, good decentralization. The national level still calls the shots. So in that situation, becoming a national or district priority becomes important. Being part of their plans and being prioritized as almost a protected space, earmarked, call it, is also critical. The need for different stakeholders to know that QI is effective and what they are working on is important, is also important. But one of the issues is actually capacity for the district teams. So one of the things that we see, we just had the student, a PhD student recently defend her PhD, a Ugandan PhD student in Sweden, on district planning and bottleneck analysis. And one of the things we bring up is the whole issue of district capacity. Many districts, especially in Uganda, we are forming new districts, but they don't have capacity. But even the old one, they are pulled left, right, and center. I think this external support, which is not well coordinated, is a challenge. So people, the managers are not in their seats to manage. Then the whole issue around decision space. In Uganda, most of the money that comes to the district is earmarked. So even if a district manager wants to do something different, to reallocate money, he is not allowed. That must be addressed. And then the whole issue around fiscal space, the amount of resources that is available. How do we have financing mechanisms that ensures prioritization of key things, but also sustainability? but also more flexibility for districts. And yet we have these problems of graft in the health sector. So those are some of the concerns around these things being embedded in district health systems. They need to be addressed. I think there are management interventions that are needed.
Thank you, Peter. Another question from Shara Divanga on what do you think would help to create political priority among decision makers for certain interventions?
What would make?
What would create to create a sense of political priority for decision makers to develop and implement such an intervention?
So again, this is a good question. I think one of the things that unfortunately is happening in the health sector is in our situation, and I guess in Tanzania, is a historical perspective that the health sector had always been left to donors. So it is many times the donors are the one who have pushed what is considered priority and what is not. And this needs to change, that we need this to go beyond people in health, to go to the public, so that we have a public that is able to exert accountability on elected leaders as a starting point, and then on the health providers as the other, and then for mechanisms for monitoring this. So for me, I think in the longer term, it is issues around when will the public be able to demand for what is they consider important and affects their lives. This is a problem. Most of our communities are quite weak. Then two, which means also the leaders that we have also a challenge because they come from that community. And then the capacity of the districts, and then other external issues. So to prioritize, I think, requires multiple efforts, both from civil society, especially to empower communities to be able to demand, then the health sector to be more responsive, and then a very good, the media, I think, plays an important role, and the oversight from ministry and the, like also in our situation like Parliament. So I think it requires multiple stakeholders to understand what are key priorities and how could they be ring-fenced and supported.
Thank you. You just gave us very good advocacy pointers as well. You have a question from Priscilla Wobil, who asking, beyond the study, what are the plans to integrate critical movement into the work of the community volunteers?
This is also a good question, and so we have presented these things several times to ministry workshops, and Uganda is trying to roll out the community health extension worker approach. We are trying to see how to engage with the government to see that some of the things that we do, they learn from them and they're able to embed. We know what it works. So I think it remains to be seen, is quality improvement going to be embedded in community health work? I think it remains to be seen, but I think it is very important that it is done, that it's embedded. Especially one of the challenges we have is a lot of these community packages are becoming too big, and you are not able to do quality improvement when you have too many priorities. It just becomes impossible to see what to focus on. The ideas just become too many and eventually ineffective. So how do we manage these packages? What goes into the package when everybody wants everything to go into the package? Okay.
We have 4 more questions, but we're only going to take 2 because we're reaching the end of our session here. Still from Priscilla, how sustainable is this approach of using community volunteers in QI, do you think? And are the community volunteers on government payroll?
So the community volunteers were volunteers, so they were not on a government payroll, but the government is planning to roll out paid community volunteers, and we are looking forward to learning from their implementation. How sustainable? I think it depends on the way it is designed, and if prioritized, and if funding for the health sector is improved, and to look at the financing mechanism. So I think we need to look at sustainability, but also impact.
Okay, and the last question, still from Priscilla. How easy was it for the health worker to grasp the concept of QI, and how the PDSA cycles worked?
So grasping, initially, it was really a new idea to the community health workers. So it took quite a number of mentorship sessions, quality improvement team meetings, learning sessions to be able, and that maybe explains why our impact didn't happen as much. But in some communities where the community workers were more educated, it was a little bit easier, and later they loved it, and they presented it, and we documented it in the videos. So it depended.
Thank you very much, Peter. We're going to stop here so Zainab can close. Just to reiterate that EQUIP has published a series of briefs as well as a video, and we're going to send links to all of this, plus your presentation, plus the recording of this webinar, plus this question that you are kindly going to answer also in writing on the website in the next few days, and we're going to share it with all of you. Zainab, over to you.
Thank you, Bennett. Thank you, Dr. Waiswa, and all the participants for contributing to this interesting discussion. Just to summarize, I think we've had a very interesting webinar. We've heard about the importance of selecting evidence-based approaches for quality improvement intervention based on local evidence, but also international evidence. How you can take a comprehensive approach working with facilities, but also involving the community and then working with the district health team. I think the issues of sustainability came out very clearly, especially in relation to linking with the national level for health systems issues, perhaps having a focal person at national level for QI, and then linking to existing planning processes, especially for budget allocation. I think we also realize that it takes time, it takes investment, especially for the mentoring and coaching roles that need to be established. And then I think we also heard about the importance of demonstrating impact and how it will be important to define clear outcomes for impact at population level. So we hope this discussion can continue online. And as Ben mentioned, it will be the recording will be available online, and we hope the discussion can follow around this. So if you find these webinars interesting, please do share it with your colleagues so we can share the lessons and the discussions to a wider audience, and then to continue to learn together on how to improve quality of care for mothers newborns. And for this time, thank you, and we hope you're able to join again next time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.